Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to It's Rainmaking Time. This is Kim Greenhouse. 6 months ago, we invited Gavin Menzies, the author of 1421, The Year China Discovered America, to It's Rainmaking Time in a blockbuster understanding of how maybe, and in fact, our history has been told inaccurately. If you are a person who loves revisionist history and is excited about seeing new evidence for what we've learned in school as kids, welcome to the conversation. Gavin Menzies has also authored the book 1434, The Year a Magnificent Chinese Fleet Sailed to Italy and Ignited the Renaissance. Everything we've learned about the Renaissance is going to change in its context, its color, its flavor, its atmosphere. Because maybe Leonardo da Vinci owned a copy of de Giorgio's treatise, Civil and Military Machines. Maybe Leonardo da Vinci was an illustrator rather than just an inventor. Also, we want to talk to Gavin Menzies about the lost treasures of Atlantis at the end of the show, which is just picked up by Orion and also by HarperCollins for worldwide rights. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome the man who's rocking the boat of history, Gavin Menzies, to It's Rainmaking Time. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me, Kim. I really enjoyed our last interview.
I enjoy all of our conversations because that's really what they are, aren't they, Gavin?
Yes,
They're
they
open inquiry conversations. All right. I thought that 1421 was going to rock the boat of history, but now we have to face 1434. You're a man who has a background in the Navy. You have been a captain of a submarine. In 1953, you joined the Royal Navy.
Yes,
I want you to talk about how this work in the Navy impacted your navigation curiosity and also gave you expertise in which to look at things. Let's talk about that first as a context.
Well, thank you, Kim. As you say, I joined the Navy in 1953. I joined submarines in 1959 because in those days you could get to command young, in your late 20s. If you'd done 5 or 6 years in submarines and you passed the commanding officer's qualifying course, you could expect to command by the time you were 30, probably by the time you were 28. My first command was to HMS Rockwell, which was a submarine based in the Far East. In those days, we had submarine bases all over the world. And whilst I was in Rockwell, we sailed around most of the world, especially in the footsteps, as you might say, of Captain Cook and Magellan. Now, I found it very interesting indeed being able to see what they saw on their historic voyages. And what you see from a submarine periscope is quite different from what you see in a big ship high up. You see everything from about 10 foot above the sea. Now, the importance of that is that things appear different taken from that height. For example, if you have a group of islands with not very high islands at the front and the tall islands at the back, it can look like a solid block of land. And some of the earlier maps and charts which I looked at did show solid blocks of land where, in fact, there were groups of islands. And therefore, I could relate to that. And I learned how to construct maps and sea maps, charts, by using a periscope with not a particularly high height of eye. So it was very, very interesting. And then you had to, of course, always know your position quite accurately, because in a submarine you could be far down below sea level, you could be several hundred feet below the sea, and of course if you got your navigation wrong, you might crash into the sea bottom, so that wouldn't be a good idea. So we learned quite a lot about practical navigation and about how to make maps, and I found that extremely useful when I came to write the book.
What led you to become interested in the Renaissance?
Complete accident. It wasn't really at all interested 4 years ago. And then in 2006, we went, Marcella and I and a group of friends, went to walk from southern Spain up the Via de la Plata That's the old historic silver route up to where the conquistadors came from in Extremadura. And we stopped at Toledo, which had been painted with such bravura by a Cretan artist. And whilst we were there was an exhibition on describing Leonardo's pumps, which had been used to bring water for the people of Toledo. And we went to this exhibition of Leonardo's work, and there was rather a curious section about pumps and hydraulic machines and so on. And it said in this section of the exhibition, we know that Leonardo da Vinci learned a great deal from Francesco di Giorgio about hydraulics for pumps and providing water for towns. Now, this came as a great surprise to me because I'd always been taught Leonardo was the inventor. So why should he learn things from other engineers? And anyway, I hadn't the faintest idea who Di Giorgio was. So when I got back to London, I looked up this chap Di Giorgio in the British Library, and I found to my astonishment that he had apparently designed a whole range of machines, both civil and military, which Leonardo improved upon. And this was an astonishment. I thought to myself, well, it's really Di Giorgio that should be getting all the credit. And I found that Di Giorgio was just a small clerk in a mountain town. He'd never been to sea, never had a university education. So I thought, well, how on earth did he suddenly manage to design all these huge array of machines, cannons and water pumps and bazookas, God knows what he didn't design. And so I thought, well, did he actually design it all out of the blue? And how did he get his knowledge? And then I found that Di Giorgio had, in fact, copied from a book which was published, or a series of books were published between 1433 and 1440 by another Italian called Taccola. And the story got even more bizarre because Taccola was a clerk of works like Giorgio. He'd never seen the sea, he'd never been to university. But here he was, this unknown nonentity, designing parachutes, helicopters, submarines, underwater swimmers, cannons, bazookas, machine guns, machines for raising ships off the bottom, on and on and on, a huge panoply of new ideas. And I wondered if there was a link between Taccola, Di Giorgio, and Leonardo, and I found there was. Basically, Taccola had written the first book.
The book that was copied from was called what?
Well, Di Giorgio's was just called The Book of Military and Civil Machines. And the title was, in effect, adapted by Leonardo. But what had happened was that Taccola started it all off. He, apparently from nowhere, came across an amazing array of machines, even down to inventing new sort of gunpowder and helicopters and all the rest of it. And Di Giorgio took over his book, and then Leonardo took over Di Giorgio's book. So, and Leonardo, we know that because in Florence, in the Leonardo Museum, there is Di Giorgio's book with Leonardo da Vinci's writing scrawled all over it, all sorts of comments and so on, page after page. So there's absolutely no doubt whatsoever. Now, what I began to wonder is how on earth did Taccola, who started the whole thing off, how on earth did he get all his ideas? And that's really what led me to this latest book, 1434.
Don't you feel like you're being led down some path? Every question you ask, there's all of these, if you will, like little crumbs leading you to these treasures.
Well, I was amazingly lucky.